Hello and welcome to Tabletop Oddity. My name is Jay and today I want to talk about the meta and potentially, well mainly the range 4 meta and why I think this is giving an edge to the Imperial factions at the moment. But before we do that, if at the end of the video you press like, and if you've not subscribed to the channel, please also consider doing that as it really does help. So you might be wondering, Jay, didn't you make a video about the meta a couple of weeks ago, talking about how vehicles perhaps weren't that great still? Yes, I did, and I mentioned how Death Troopers and Krennic were not a meta-defining list, but one of the top-tier lists, right? And I still stand by that. But I was thinking about making a list for the IPQs, a Valley Point qualifier near me, and I was like, do I take Snowtroopers or DLTs? I'm obviously going to take some DLTs. It was just do I take any Snowtroopers, and if I do, how many? Because basically with Death Troopers and the increasing potentially decent characters like Bosk and Krennic and all that kind of stuff, my core choices have sort of reduced. So instead of maybe having 3 DLTs and 2 Snowtroopers, maybe I might only have 4 DLTs or maybe 3 DLTs and a Snowtrooper. So yeah, like I think the choices have become limited, so in my head this became a relevant discussion that I needed to have. And Ellis from Legion Command, who I highly recommend you go check out, he was like, get in on the range 4 meta, just commit to it, and that makes sense. So then what am I talking about? The meta overall possibly favouring the Imperials. I think at this stage it's pretty hard to doubt that. I think maybe Sabine might mix things up, but at the moment I went to a previous Rally Point qualifying. I think there was maybe 20 of us, maybe 14 of them were Imperials, something like that. It was actually 17 of us, but I'm trying to keep the ratio correct. And in the Invader League, I know that at least there's 32 teams that are 32 players that are in the next, like in the final round, and it's about 22 out of 32 that are Imperials. I think there's evidence right now that more people are playing Imperials, which I think is because the Imperials are edging it right now. I think when the game first came out, that may have not been the case, even though people thought it was the case, because the red defense dice on the Imperials were a little bit more forgiving, but I think Luke was a lot better as a character option, so I think really when the games came out, they were reasonably well balanced. But right now, I think there's definitely an edge to me towards the Imperials, for sure, right? I mean, we can disagree if you like, but in my opinion, I just think the Imperials are edging it right now, and I think it comes down to this range 4 meta kind of thing. And with the range 4 meta, we never really had you never built your list around range 4. At least it never seemed to me that you would do. Yes, the DLTs would be 2 red dice at range 4 and then white dice at range 3. And the other options that you could have for range 4, snipers, they were a classically good choice, but they're generally in the list because they're cheap activations, PS1 and all that kind of good stuff. Via's is 1 pip, Boba Fett's 3, Leia's 1. The FD cannon early on sort of was range 4, except you can't really move it, so it's a little bit easier to play around. Basically, you weren't building lists with range in mind. It was sort of like an added benefit. It wasn't the main part of the list. And I think really the change here is the Death Troopers, right? Krennic and the Death Troopers. I think you sort of, if you're going to run Death Troopers, you sort of want to run Krennic. But yeah, the Death Troopers specifically, because they pump out so much good damage at range 4. If you take that extra weapon, there's 4 black dice. If you take the DLT along with them as well, you get 2 red, 1 white. That's a lot of firepower at range 4 specifically. And yes, the weapon needs to be recovered. It's an exhaustible weapon. But by that point, your enemy might have moved into range 3 and you can shoot them. And that's why, essentially, that sums up why range 4 is better on average. Obviously, range 4 is better than range 3, duh, in the words of Billie Eilish. But it's simply because of that. If you can stand at range 4 of your enemy, and they're only at range 3, let's say a Z6 trooper, and this has happened to me while I've been the Rebels, if I let my opponents just shoot their DLTs at me all game, I'm going to lose men for nothing in return if I'm the Rebel player in this situation. But if I move into range 3, then I have to move and shoot, in which case they can just aim and shoot, and then they're going to get their extra white dice, but yeah, I'm going to get my shot, but they're going to get their extra white dice, and they're probably going to be sat in cover anyway. And if you're at the very edge of range 4, in theory, you might not even be able to move and shoot. You might have to move, and then shoot. So you're just giving up, like taking away activations from your opponent by making them move to shoot you is obviously good. So yeah, like range 4 is obviously better than range 3, but in gameplay terms, it has a lot of implications about forcing your enemy to move around the board, and not just being, well, you're obviously going to have more options as well, but really it's that sort of like activation advantage, essentially. So range 4 is obviously better, but we weren't necessarily playing around it when the game first came out. But I think the Death Troopers being so potent at range 4 and having such a great defensive save, they seem like a great unit to me all round, and I feel like now you can sort of commit to the range 4 idea. Boba Fett isn't range 4, well, unless you use this pip, 3 pip, 2 pip, 2 pip. Is 2 pip? Could be 3 pip, whichever one it is. But he's so maneuverable that he sort of counters his lack of range. So he is range 3 or 2 if you want both his weapons by default. But and like Vias and Krennic, they don't necessarily shoot at range 4. But you know, now when I was building my list, it was like I've got these Death Troopers in, I've got the snipers in, maybe 3 units of snipers and a unit of Death Troopers, or 2 Death Troopers and 2 snipers. Either way, you've got some really seriously potently good range attacks. And then it's a case of, well, what do you do with your core troopers? I obviously want some DLTs. If I'm going to take just 4 units of core troopers, am I going to take any snows? And that was the decision I was having. I think online in the Invader League, out of about 22 Imperial players, I think like 16 just had DLTs and about 5 or 6 had some snows. So there's a leaning, at least, towards that range 4 DLT choice. Now, so that's, I think we're talking about the Imperials there quite a lot, obviously. The Imperials have an ability now to build a list around long-ranged attacks. And obviously you can see why there's an advantage to that. And we'll talk about, well, how would you counter that if you're, say, the Rebels? Well, you want to get Luke or possibly Sabine, get all movement 2, movement 3, jumping over stuff, hiding, getting in your grill. Fair enough, but that's you know, if you need a specific strategy to counter them, that could obviously be a slight issue. And the Rebels don't really have this advantage. They don't have many range 4 weapons. I think you've got one on the new vehicle. You've got Luke and Sabine, who are good at faster movement, and the FD cannon. I think that might be about it. So you can't really commit to that as the Rebels. Now, you don't necessarily need to commit it as the Imperials. Like, if you do throw in a unit of snows, you still got some really good close range like combat. So this is why I think, you know, the fact that the Rebels can do it and the Imperials can do this range 4 kind of play style is one of the reasons why the Imperials are leading the charge in the meta at the moment. Now, you know, I think this doesn't mean it's going to stay this way. And there's a lot of reasons, I think, why the Imperials might be better than Rebels, simply because of the defense dice. The Imperials can be a little bit more forgiving. Yes, they can be a little bit more high variance, because if you have a few bad rolls, your advantages are disintegrated a little bit quicker, perhaps. You lose your models, and you never, you know, that's important. So there's a bit more variance, but overall, I think the Rebels, with the worst saves and generally falling back on the Z6 and Luke kind of meta at the moment. Although Han's coming back, I think, with the PS2 Gunslinger against DT's quite decent. Yeah, I just feel like the Imperials at the moment are edging it. They're a little bit safer to play, easier to play, and I don't mean that as an insult. I'm playing them right now at the RPQ, don't worry. But they're a little bit more forgiving, I reckon. Whereas units like Luke and probably Sabine are going to require a little bit more finesse and perhaps a little bit more skill to really get more like potent use out of them. And yeah, it just seems to me that the Imperials are edging it. Now, this is all, you know, not necessarily speculation, but for all I know, the game could change very quickly with Bossk and Sabine. I think Sabine's going to be pretty decent. I can definitely see a world in which you run Han and Sabine, or Sabine and Luke, something like that. I've not properly looked into that yet. And I can see a world where Bossk is simply added into the Imperial list, but Bossk is range 2 to 4. Firing off his natural crits and his surge to crit, great name for a podcast, he's range 2 to 4. He's essentially just adding into the range 4 meta rather than taking it away. Now, once we get the Bounty Hunter and Sabine, the one thing I'm not 100% sure that will happen will be with the Core Troopers. Core Troopers and Tauntauns and Dewbacks, I don't really know how they're going to affect the meta. Tauntauns, is that how you say it? Look like a potentially good counter to a range 4 meta because you very quickly get up in your face. They look like they're going to have like a charge ability or something like that. So you can double move and do some damage. That's going to be a potentially counter to that. You could even argue that speeder bikes could be, but I don't really think speeder bikes at the moment are. Although I'm seeing a lot of people talking about using them 3 at a time. Maybe they are coming back, maybe not. But yeah. That's a very rambly video though, I hope you don't mind. It's a little bit rambly because I recorded this a few times and decided halfway through that I needed to talk about something slightly differently. And then I'm not sure what I said and what I didn't say because I'm a utmost professional like that. So do forgive me, but I'll try and summarize it just before I go. Essentially, you can now play around the Imperial list building and you can play around range 4. You can design your list around range 4 and you have that as an advantage over Rebels. I think that's one of the reasons, not necessarily the pure sole reason, that the Imperials right now are edging the meta against the Rebels. There's evidence at local Rally Point qualifiers and there's evidence in the Invader League of those things being true. If you disagree with me, you're more than welcome to disagree with me. Just whack it in the comments and we'll have a nice friendly banter. But yeah, I think that's the case. And I think the Death Troopers were the I don't know, the light post of this. They're the ones that signaled this change, and perhaps I didn't realize it at the time, but I think the range 4 is perhaps the more defining element to them rather than anything else. Boop. Yep, that's my thoughts. I think it's interesting. I think Sabine and Bosk not gonna change things too much. I think Sabine and Bosk will both be in the meta, but I don't think they are gonna change the balance of the factions too much. And the Core Troopers, I think Core Troopers, Tauntauns, and that kind of stuff, we need to see more information before we really talk about them. But they'll be next month. Sabine and Bosk will be in a couple of weeks, I believe. So that's exciting. Yeah, let me know your thoughts. Have a most beautiful day. Do like and subscribe. I do apologize for talking about the meta so soon, but I was driving to work today and I was like, boom. Do I go range 4 or do I go range 3? Let's check. Snow Troopers aren't really range 3. Well, they are range 3, but you really want to get up close and personal with frags and stuff like that. I'm rambling now. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.